Welcome back to another video. Spence here at Core 4x4. Now, if you've watched our channel or you follow us on here, you may have noticed this beast of a Jeep that's just been sitting in the studio in all the background shots. Now, this is our Wrangler JK, and it stays in the studio because I put all the doors on the wall for decoration and I don't want it out in the weather. But the weather is finally changing. Spring is here. It's time to get it ready to go out on the rocks, and it needs some upgrades. Now, this has our crawler kit on it, crawler control arms, crawl track bar front and rear. This is our rig that's 100% off-road, so it's time it finally gets a long arm kit. So we're gonna have the JK in the studio on the lift for the next few weeks, and we're gonna be doing some upgrades. But today we're gonna start with some teardown and prep to install our new long arm kit. But before we do anything, we gotta get it out of its winter hole over here and onto the lift. Let's hope this starts. It's literally been sitting for like 3 months. I got lights. Nope, she dead. Time to jump it. If you're gonna leave your Jeep sitting all winter, put it on a trickle charger, or, you know, take care of your battery. Don't do what I did. Bring the TJ in here and jump this thing. There we go. All right. Oh, those tires haven't moved in a while. All right, so now that we have the JK dusted off for spring, this is the kit we're gonna be putting on it. Now, this is our long arm kit for the Wrangler JK 07 to 18. This works on the 2-door and the 4-door models, and it is a true 4-link. And if you watched our last video, we are a fan of true 4-links when it comes to long arm kits. And we typically stay away from the radius style or the kits that have those long lowers and then the short uppers. They just cause all sorts of problems with axle wrap and actual flexibility and suspension cycling. When you're above 4.5 inches of lift, that's when you really start to gain the benefit of a long arm kit. Now, this is a full weld-on kit and does require you to remove your factory brackets. So you not only need a welder, but you also need a grinder, and I do recommend a Sawzall. It makes it cleaner and easier to do. Now, for the rear portion of this kit, we are gonna have to remove the gas tank in order to do the welding on the frame that we need to. We will show you how to do that. It is pretty straightforward, but before we got into it, I did wanna let you know that this is a pretty intensive install, and I do recommend having a couple days to get it done. I have a full tank, so we're gonna be siphoning the gas because I hate dealing with a full gas tank and taking it out. So we'll show you how to do all that, but for now, let's get over to the lift, get it in the air, and we're gonna start tearing things down. All right, so before we get into teardown, I wanted to talk about a few of the upgrades I want to do. We're going to do like a little mini series on the JK, and we'll see if we get to all these, but these are some of my wants on the JK. Coilovers, our 2.5 ton steering upgrade. We need to do the inner fender liners. Those haven't been done, as well as some modifications to control arm mounts to improve the ground clearance on this. The rear mounts I've bashed on rocks, and they hang kind of low. This Jeep already has a lot going for it. It is on Curry 70s, so big old axles. It's got 513 gears. This is a 40-inch tire. Oh, that reminds me, we also need to do bump stops because I tore one of the tires the first time out because I tucked too far. So it needs bump stops. That's about it. I'm sure there'll be some other things, but if there's something you want to see while we're working on the JK, comment down below, let us know, and we'll see if we can get to it. But enough of that. So for teardown today and this week, because we're gonna make this a 2-part video, we're gonna do teardown and prep, and then next week we are gonna do the full long arm install. So we need to get all the control arms off. We're gonna support our axles so they're not just hanging on the shocks. And then we do need to drop the fuel tank. So we're gonna drain and drop the fuel tank just to give us room to cut our rear brackets off and also do the welding next week. So yeah, so we got quite a bit of work. So let's get into teardown, get all the arms off and start cutting. All right, so we got all the control arms off, so now we're going to work on dropping the fuel tank. Now, we need to drop the fuel tank because not only do we have to cut the lower rear passenger control arm mount off and get at the welds behind to cut that all the way off, but we also got to do some welding right here between the fuel tank and the frame for that rear passenger control arm mount. So it's got to come out. I have 4 gas cans and some rubber hose, and we're just going to disconnect the filler hose here on the top of the fuel tank because there is a check valve, so we don't want to mess with that. So we're going to go in right here. We're going to suck on the hose, hopefully not suck any fuel, and see if we can get all the gas out. So here we go. So we finally got that hose off the tank. I was just being careful because the plastic fitting made me nervous. So I'm hoping this holds everything, or at least enough of it that we can maneuver the tank without having too many issues. If you've never siphoned fuel before, we're just going to use gravity. We're going to create suction manually with my mouth and just hope I don't get any in my throat. And yeah.
Do you have a clear one?
Yeah, I know. They didn't have a clear one. We might get some fuel in my face or on the ground, but we'll make sure it's all dry and cleaned up before we start cutting, because last thing I want in the studio is a fire. So we're going to get this ready, get the hose in there, start sucking, and hopefully don't make a mess. The inside, the nipple here, it necks down kind of weird, so we're going to try to get this hose in around it. So let's see how that goes. There's also an easier way to do this, which we can get a ladder since we're all on jack stands now and disconnect our fuel line up at the fuel rail and then trip the relay for our fuel pump and just have our fuel pump this all out. But we're going to try this method since I'm stubborn and already bought all the gas tanks. 1/4 inch fuel line. I was able to fit it down in. I'm pretty sure I'm in the gas, and we're going to start sucking. Hopefully not drinking any of this. That was really quick. Ha! Okay, that's going. Oh. Yeah, that's going quicker than I thought with the smaller hose. So we're going to watch this. That was gross. All right, I'm good. I didn't swallow any. Freaking, I can still taste it. Your skid here is the only thing holding the tank up. There's not straps like a traditional fuel tank. So I'm going to start undoing some of these bolts. We do need to take off the transmission skid here as well. So that's 4 bolts. And then there's bolts all up and down this skid. I'm not going to take them all out because we're still watching the fuel and still draining that. But we're going to get started on it and get ready. Highly recommend a transmission jack if you're up on a hoist doing any sort of fuel tank removal. It's fantastic for that. But if you're down on the ground, a normal jack is fine, especially if your tank's empty. But you also have on the JK the weight of this skid, and that looks about full, so we're going to go swap tanks. I'm just going to go real quick. There we go. While this one's going, we'll get some bolts out. Actually, I'm going to cap this off. We're going to leave these front 2 in, and then the back 2 in. We'll get these side ones out. If you're like me, kind of dented the crap out of this, so you can tell as I'm pulling bolts out, everything's kind of bent and flexy. Okay, so we weren't looking, and we may have overfilled one. Just spilled all over us. All right, last tank. We're done siphoning, so won't be nearly as heavy. But now we can start undoing some bolts so we can get better access to our fuel lines, and we can start disconnecting everything. There is your evap cable here. We'll have to mess with that. And then this one connection at the rear, as well as this this hose here we're going to have to deal with. So 1, 2, your filler hose, your evap. So about 4 connections in the rear and 2 connections in the front. And that should be it for the fuel tank. So we're going to get the transmission jack under here and take out the last couple bolts and start bringing this down so we have better access to all this. And yeah, that should be about it. We can get this out. We kind of broke this clip. They're pretty fragile, so we're going to try to get a screwdriver in there to get this one off. And then if you've never used those these fuel disconnect tools, these are like the cheap Harbor Freight ones. There's better ones than these, but we got it slid on our line up here to disconnect this front one. We're just going to try not to break anything else. Luckily we have this awesome drain. We have a lot of cutting and grinding to do today, so we're gonna let the studio air completely out. Fuel and cutting and grinding on your frame is not a good mix, so just be careful if you're doing it like this. If you push on the back, it opens up, but when they're old and never been off before, they don't operate really great, so I just pried these open. But yeah, for that line. Now I bet this one's just gonna be just as hard. If you're messing with fuel lines, they're a pain. There we go. That one is better. All right, we're gonna try not to break this clip. It's the same as the front. All right, we do have the wire for the fuel pump right here. Okay. So we broke our little red tab there a little bit. Now you just slide that over and then unclip. Got the red dirt. We'll clean that all off before we put this back in. If you've never cut your brackets off your frame, this is the point of no return. So on the rear, we gotta get this whole weld cut and we're gonna flush it up. Front and back on both sides. And then on the front, we just need to do the lower control arm mount. It's fully welded. So we'll remove this wiring harness, get it out of the way, and gotta get this weld cut on both sides. Probably take this little cross member off just to be able to get at these welds. So yeah, let's pop that off now and then we'll get to cutting. I think we're good to go to start cutting brackets. Now this portion of the install is probably the most intimidating for most people when doing a long arm kit on the JK or on any vehicle where we're cutting off our existing frame brackets. Because like I said before, this is the point of no return. But honestly, if you have the right tools and you just take your time, it's actually a lot easier than people think. And for this process, I highly recommend some of the tools we have in front of us. First and foremost is your Sawzall. Now, a Sawzall is going to do the bulk of the work here today. It's going to be able to get nice and tight to the frame. It's going to be able to hit those welds and make a clean cut that's easy to clean up afterwards. But make sure you have enough blades. We have like 9, no, 2, 4. We have like 7 blades. We'll probably go through all these and more. And always get a good blade. Diablo makes a really good blade. This is their medium metal. It's a little bit thinner so it can get into places and flex a little more and really get those hard to reach welds and angles. Now, you're gonna want a grinder as well. For the cutoff wheel, I highly recommend you find a wheel that has the recess for the mount on your grinder. This is gonna allow you to get your grinder more flush with the frame as you're cutting the weld, and this will prevent you from digging into the frame and causing gouges that you really don't want. And then of course, get a flap disc just to clean up all your cuts and any excess weld left on the frame to make a nice, smooth, seamless install. Now, if you're like us and you're using battery powered tools, which we do love, the Milwaukee battery powered series, you're gonna need a lot of batteries, because this is a lot of cutting. We're doing all 4 brackets, 2 front, 2 rear. And we'll probably go through at least all of these, if not twice. So get a lot of batteries, or have a charger ready, or just use a corded tool. I don't care for cords, so we're doing the cordless version. And yeah, so this is the hard part, maybe the most work of this install. Let's get under the Jeep and start cutting brackets off. All right, so front's done. It's cleaned up. We'll probably clean up a little more before we weld the brackets on when we check fitment and make sure we have room to weld all our beads. Now, if you watch me cut the front and you're super confident now, hold off on that. The new bracket here will replace our factory body mount. So we're taking the whole body mount off, the lower control arm, and the upper control arm mount. Quite a bit more cutting, so we're gonna get our body mount undone here and just start tearing into it. We did it. That wraps it up for teardown and prep. So control arms are off, axles are situated, all the brackets are removed, and we only went through 3 cutoff wheels, 3 little flap discs, 2 of the big flap discs. I highly recommend a bigger grinder for cleanup with these bigger flap discs. That was clutch in cleaning up some of our terrible cuts. And then we also went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 Sawzall blades. So the 115 pack would have got us through. Now, if one of you does it better than I just did, comment down below, let me know. Now, I could have busted out the plasma cutter, but not everybody has a plasma cutter. I want to show you guys how to do it at home with tools that are readily available. And honestly, the rear end was actually a lot easier than I thought. Even though there's more brackets and more things to cut off, it was actually a lot easier to access with the little grinder, get those welds cut, and just pry those brackets off. The front's actually a little bit more difficult in my opinion. Like if you're skilled with a Sawzall or a grinder, I'd estimate maybe about 2 hours of actual cutting and cleanup. If you're, running through batteries and change out and all that, it could take a bit longer. Now, as far as teardown and prep for the long arm install, you can do it all in one day. I would recommend setting aside a couple days to do this. It is a pretty intensive install. So we still have a long way to go with the install of the long arm kit. There is going to be some fitting, some more cleanup, and a lot of welding. With all the salt we have in Utah, I do plan on box welding everything I can to keep all the moisture out and to keep the rust down. So stay tuned for next week. We will be doing the full install. We're also going to do a color change on the arms to match the Jeep. But the kit we showed in the beginning of the video, that is the raw aluminum version if you want to order the raw aluminum and like that look. But we do offer it in all our colors. We're going to be doing a surprise color. Yeah, it might match the Jeep. And as always, guys, I appreciate you watching. We love making this content. We love showing you how to do some of the installs and some of the mods that we do to our own Jeeps. So if you have any questions, please comment down below, and always like and subscribe because that really helps us out in what we're doing, and we'll catch you in the next one.